You're getting ready to listen to the podcast on projective assessment, and this would be a module that I would use in my assessment class, talking about interesting topics such as sand tray therapy, house person tree. They do at the end, I'll make you aware, they'll talk about the Rorschach, and I know that some people don't consider that a projective assessment. Probably some do, so you can debate that among yourselves. What I've done is I've uploaded my notes for this module into Notebook LM. They analyzed it. When I say they, AI analyzed it. These are AI voices you're going to hear. Other than some mispronunciations, I think they do a really nice job of analyzing the notes that I put in there, even the notes that I put into the PowerPoint, the notes section of PowerPoint, they catch that stuff as well. So I hope you find this helpful, and I look forward to your feedback. Talk to you soon.
How do we really get a sense of someone's inner world? Beyond just the words they use, those unspoken thoughts, hidden feelings, the things that shape them, but maybe they don't even realize they're showing us. It's a deep question, right? Because often the most profound insights aren't said directly. They're revealed. So today we're taking a deep dive into this really fascinating world of projective assessment and projective techniques used in counseling. Basically, these are incredibly clever tools. They're designed to help counselors and clients too get unique insights into personality, experiences, needs, thought processes, often just by having someone respond to something ambiguous.
Exactly. And our mission today really is to explore how these kinds of creative interpretive tools can offer a unique shortcut, a way to get deeply informed about a person's inner landscape. And honestly, they provide some genuinely surprising facts about how our minds work. It all kind of hinges on this idea called the projective hypothesis. The core idea is simple. When you respond to something open-ended, like, say, an ambiguous image or a prompt, your answers aren't random. No, they actually reflect your basic personality, your inner states at that moment, and your unique ways of thinking.
Okay, so it's like a window.
Sort of, yeah. And the goals for using these techniques in counseling are really powerful. First, they show the counselor is genuinely interested in all the variables affecting a client's life, even the hidden ones. They also give clients new tools, new ways to consider different perspectives for self-discovery, pushing them to think outside the box, And this is important. They foster compassion, helping everyone see this is hard for them rather than just thinking, oh, they're damaged or they're powerless. Plus, critically, they help make sure no vital information gets missed. Things like suicidal thoughts, for example.
That's huge. And you touched on something else from the sources, something about the act of creating itself.
Yes. That was a really profound point. The idea that the very act of creation, just physically drawing something, arranging objects in sand, even without any formal assessment or interpretation, can be inherently healing.
Wow. Just the process itself.
Exactly. It's powerful.
Okay, so let's unpack this a bit more. We're talking about tools that unlock hidden insights. Who are these techniques typically for? Is there like a standard profile?
Not really, and that's actually what makes them so versatile. They're incredibly valuable across a really diverse range of people and situations. Think about a cardiologist suddenly develops severe anxiety whenever a patient mentions chest pain, even if there's no clear medical reason. Or maybe a neurodivergent student, nonverbal, but clearly struggling with loneliness, feeling isolated. Yeah. Or parents worried about their 18-year-old. Suddenly withdrawn, talking to himself. Or, get this, a 5th grader who refuses to go to school, developing compulsive behaviors like a fear of germs right after taking an antibiotic.
Okay, so really complex situations.
Definitely. Or even a 45-year-old facing serious health and job problems from drinking daily since they were, say, 12. Or an attorney, seriously contemplating suicide after another relationship ends badly.
That's, an incredibly wide spectrum. And the sources brought up an interesting point about empathy here, didn't they?
They did. It's often, relatively easier for us to feel empathy for people who've experienced things like abuse, trauma, neglect, discrimination, anxiety, depression. We can usually connect with that pain.
Right. We kind of get it.
Yeah. But it can be significantly harder sometimes to access that same empathy for clients who've been violent or show those dark tetrad traits, psychopathy, narcissism, or maybe they have conduct disorder, repeat offenses, just a disregard for others.
It's a tough one.
It is. But what's so powerful about these techniques is they can actually help bridge that understanding gap. They let counselors see the deeper drivers, maybe the pain or confusion behind even really challenging behaviors.
Okay, this is where it gets really interesting for me. We're talking about tapping into the nonverbal. Let's dig into some specific techniques. Starting with drawing. It sounds simple, maybe like kids stuff, but the insights,
Drawing is definitely a key projective technique, absolutely. Though, historically, our sources point out that recalling early memories was maybe one of the very first, according to Monroe back in 1955. That and sentence completion tests.
Finishing sentences.
Yeah, I feel happiest when, that kind of thing. But drawing, especially tests like the house tree person, the HTP, really brought this powerful visual element into play.
The HTP John Buck, 1948. I find this one fascinating because each thing you draw is supposed to represent a different part of yourself, right? Like the house.
Exactly. The house often connects to your family relations, your values, your home life experience, and the details matter hugely. The roof might tap into your intellectual or spiritual side, the walls, your sense of self, your ego strength. Doors and windows, how you relate to the outside world, how open or closed you are.
And the counselor doesn't just look, they ask questions.
Oh, absolutely. The interaction is key. Questions like who lives in this house? Is it a happy house? What's it made of? What usually goes on inside? Those kinds of things.
Okay. And then the tree, what's that about?
The tree is often thought to represent the deeper, maybe more unconscious aspects of the self, your core identity, how you feel rooted in life. The branches could symbolize social connections, how you reach out. The trunk, your inner strength, your core self. The crown, ideas, thoughts, self-concept.
And the questions probe that.
Yeah, really evocative questions. What kind of tree is this? How old is it? What season are we in? Is it alive, thriving? Even who waters it? Suggesting sources of nurturing.
Wow. Okay, house, tree,
Yeah.
and person.
The person drawing. This one often represents the self, maybe the ideal self or how you see yourself or want to be seen. The head can relate to intelligence, communication, imagination. The eyes, how you perceive the world, see others. Hands are interesting. They can relate to affect, how you interact, even aggression.
And the questions get personal.
Right to the core. Who is this person? How old are they? How are they feeling right now? Are they happy? What do they like to do? It opens up a lot about identity. And building on that HTP idea, there's also the Draw Person Test, the DAP. Florence Goodenough, 1926. This one's a bit different.
How so?
It focuses less on the symbolic meaning of what is drawn, like a house or tree, and more on the amount of detail included. The basic idea is that more detail often correlates with certain cognitive or developmental levels. It looks for things like proportions, facial expressions, fingers, clothes, hair.
So it's more about the complexity.
Kind of, yeah.
Yeah.
It can give a quick snapshot, especially developmentally or sometimes emotionally.
Yeah.
Are basic elements present? Is there expression? Things like that. Scored quite simply, usually point per item.
Okay, let's make this concrete. Can we walk through an example? How might someone interpret a drawing?
Sure. Imagine a drawing of a family. Let's say all the members are there, mostly smiling faces, seems generally happy. But maybe the dad looks a bit less grounded than the others. You'd look at the details. Is there hair, mouth, eyebrows, hands with fingers, maybe specific clothing details, a design on a shirt, a belt, shoes?
Right. What about the house in this hypothetical drawing?
Okay, say the house has a really prominent roof. Maybe it even goes off the page. A counselor might wonder, does this suggest a big imagination? A rich spiritual life, maybe living in their head a bit? What if it's a solid-looking house, maybe with a fence? That could point to feeling safe or needing strong boundaries.
But what if there are no windows?
Yeah, that absence could be significant. Maybe feeling closed off. A lack of clarity about oneself or others. It's a possibility to explore. And the people. Maybe they're reaching for each other, but not quite touching. What could that suggest?
Maybe caring, but not quite connecting fully, like emotional distance despite wanting connection.
Could be. Or maybe difficulty with physical intimacy or expression. It's about forming hypotheses to discuss. And pets. Sometimes a pet, like a dog, is drawn prominently, maybe at the same height as the people. That often shows the pet is really seen as part of the family, a source of support, not just owned.
That makes sense. What about the background stuff? Sky, trees?
Those matter too. Blue sky, sunshine, a tree generally point towards positivity, hopefulness. A tree with a big, solid trunk could suggest inner strength, resilience.
And you mentioned yellow grass earlier.
Right.
Yeah.
That was an interesting example. Literally, it could just be dry grass, but symbolically. Maybe a lack of feeling grounded in the physical world, but perhaps identifying more with the spiritual or intellectual side. Again, it's a starting point for conversation.
It's amazing how much potential meaning is packed in there. You mentioned AI analysis too.
Yeah, our sources had an example where an AI analysis picked up on even more nuances. Things like figures holding hands indicating connection, sure, but how they're positioned, their relative size suggesting closeness or importance. Or your own figure, if it's drawn smaller or less defined, may be pointing to lower self-esteem.
Okay.
Parental figures, their placement, even dark clothing colors might suggest perceived authority or maybe emotional distance. Use of color is big too. A mix of bright and dark might show emotional balance, while lots of dark tones could hint at anxieties.
Right.
Environmental stuff, like a barn or open space, could show comfort in certain settings. Lack of clear smiles or expressive eyes might suggest emotional restraint. Proportions matching age are usually just normal development.
Hmm.
Who's standing closest to whom can indicate the strongest bond. Small objects or pets might symbolize specific attachments or comforts. And the sun, its presence and placement, often links to optimism or mood.
So many layers. Are there other general things counselors look for when interpreting drawings?
Definitely. Beyond the specific symbols, there are broader principles. The size of objects, a tiny house might suggest dissatisfaction with home life, feeling small or constricted there. Level of detail, as we mentioned with DIP, is key. Loads of detail, especially on a face, might mean a need to present well, maybe perfectionism. Very little detail could link to depression, withdrawal.
And where things are placed on the page.
Yes. Top of the page often relates to fantasy, dreams, intellect. Bottom, more about reality, groundedness, physical concerns. Right side is often linked to the future, center to the present, left to the past. Even the lines themselves. Firm, strong lines might suggest confidence, decisiveness, hesitant, light, sketchy lines, maybe insecurity, anxiety.
It's not just the drawing then.
Not at all. The person's attitude while drawing matters too. What they say, their gestures, their level of engagement, it's all part of the assessment. And some classic interpretations, though you always take them with context. Hands hidden behind the back sometimes suggest introversion or holding something back. Dark, heavy shading could hint at anger or aggression. Small drawings overall, maybe low self-esteem. Very large heads. In some specific older contexts, that was considered a potential flag for neurological issues, but that needs extreme caution and corroboration.
It's clearly complex. You also mentioned another drawing exercise, the rose bush.
Ah, yes, the rose bush, often used with adults. It's simple, draw a rose bush. But then crucially, describe it. The symbolism in the description can be incredibly revealing. The source gave a great example response. Someone drew their rose bush and said, "I have big, thick branches so that I do not break.
Wow.
I am in the ground and have deep roots that overlap, making it difficult to uproot me. I do have thorns. We all do. Mother Nature takes care of me."
That's incredibly telling. Resilience, independence, connection to nature, acceptance of flaws, all in a description of a drawing.
Exactly. It shows how these simple prompts can open up really rich self-reflection.
Okay, so drawings offer this amazing 2D window. But what about moving into 3 dimensions? How does something like building a world in a sand tray work?
Right, the sand tray. This technique, often associated with Dorokoff, takes that projective idea and makes it tangible, spatial. A projective diagnosis here might involve looking at the sand tray creations and seeing how they correlate with other assessments, building a holistic picture. When interpreting, the counselor looks at several things. First, obviously the content. What did the client say while creating it? What themes emerge? What nonverbals did the counselor notice?
Like how they interacted with it.
Exactly. And also the therapist's own feeling response. What emotions did the scene evoke in me, the counselor, and how does that resonate or contrast with what the client seems to be expressing? That countertransference piece is really informative.
Interesting. What else?
How space is used is critical. A tray that's absolutely packed full might suggest a mind overflowing with conscious activity, maybe anxiety, feeling overwhelmed. Empty halves could mean depression, maybe feeling split, or sometimes it might mean inner clarity. Calmness context is key. But if someone consistently leaves half the tray empty, that might point to a deeper imbalance, or maybe difficulty facing certain threatening or painful inner stuff. Lots of empty space overall. Could link to low self-esteem, feeling small.
And the sand itself.
How they use the sand matters too. Being really reluctant to touch it could indicate fear of unconscious material, maybe difficulty with the physical, sensual side of life. Constantly smoothing and flattening the sand might suggest a strong need to control emotions, or maybe a fear of obsessive thoughts bubbling up.
Ooh, shapes.
Yeah.
Colors.
Yep. Shapes created can be revealing. Round forms might suggest connection to feminine energy, wholeness. Geometric, precise structures, maybe more masculine energy dominance, or a need for rigid order. Dominant colors and the chosen values matter. Lots of red figures. Could mean depression combined with a desire to feel alive, passion. Lots of green. Maybe passivity or a focus on growth.
And the blue bottom of the tray?
Ah, yes. If a client never uses the blue bottom, which often represents water or depth, it might signify a fear of going too deep emotionally, avoiding the unconscious. The figures chosen are huge. If someone avoids using figures altogether, that could suggest defensiveness, maybe difficulty engaging with internal parts of the self. And what figures? People, animals, mythical creatures, vegetation. What do those specific figures mean to the client? That's crucial.
And where they put them?
Placement, absolutely. Are figures clustered together, far apart, facing each other, turned away? All speaks volumes about relationships, internal conflicts, connection, isolation. Also, the level of differentiation. Is it just a jumble of things, like a chaotic battle scene? Or is there a clear, coherent scene? A zoo scene, for example, can actually be positive, showing some organization and differentiation of instinctual energies.
What about relationships between figures?
Key insights there. Sometimes severe disturbance might show up as two completely unrelated scenes in the same tray, side by side, suggesting internal fragmentation. Low energy, feeling stuck. Might be symbolized by, say, a bridge that leads right back to where it started. No progress.
Like being trapped.
Exactly. And movement, or lack thereof. Fences with no gates. Lakes with no rivers flowing in or out. These kinds of block systems can be powerful visual metaphors for depression, stagnation, feeling trapped. And finally, how close is the scene to everyday reality? Is it a depiction of home or school? Or is it a faraway, fantastical landscape? That says something about how connected or disconnected the person feels from their present reality, maybe retreating into fantasy.
It's like building a map of the psyche in sand.
Yeah.
Incredible. And of course, we should probably briefly mention the most famous one.
The Rorschach.
Yeah, the ink blots. Everyone sort of knows that one, even if just from movies.
Right. The Rorschach ink blot test is another classic projective technique. Looking at those ambiguous ink blots and saying what you see is, again, all about revealing underlying thought patterns, emotional responses, how you organize ambiguous information. It definitely belongs in this conversation.
So wrapping this up,
Yeah.
when we look at all these techniques, drawing, sand tray, even ink blots, what's the big takeaway?
I think the main thing is the sheer power they have to uncover insights that might just never surface in a regular conversation. They bypass our usual verbal defenses sometimes. They offer these really unique, creative avenues for self-discovery and for understanding others on a much deeper, more nuanced level. It gives you a fuller picture of what it means to be human, really.
The fuller picture. I like that.
And maybe a final thought to leave people with. If we connect this to the bigger picture, think about it. If our drawings, our sand creations, can reveal so much about our inner world, what might that suggest about the meaning hidden in all the little creative acts we do every day? You know, doodling on a notepad during a meeting, the way you arrange photos on your desk, or even organize your bookshelf. What might those seemingly small things unintentionally reveal about your deepest self, your needs, your way of seeing the world? Maybe just understanding these techniques can shift how you look at your own self-expression and how you perceive all the subtle communications happening around you all the time.